I'm your host, Dina Adams, and today we are speaking with Sabrina Victoria. I got introduced to Sabrina through a mutual connection, and we had an incredible conversation. And so as you are listening to this podcast, I'm going to encourage you to just tune in, lean in, shut out the distractions. Her story of overcoming is a bit intense. She is someone who has a heart for helping others improve their lives. And because of that, she's so willing to be open, to be vulnerable, and to share things that most people won't. And she's willing to go a bit deeper than just staying on the surface and staying shallow. So, Sabrina, thank you so much for gracing us with your time and your story today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This is the kind of stuff that needs to be shared. This is how we learn.
I completely agree. So first, why don't you start by telling us who you are, what you do, and who you serve in your business?
Of course. I found out how we met, by the way. Divian,
yes. Thank you, Divian. I'm sure he'll listen to this. See, and that's the thing. We got connected by someone in a whole nother country, and you're half a country away from me. So I just love what virtual is doing for us these days.
It's crazy, for sure.
Okay, go ahead and introduce yourself. So who you are, what you do, and who you serve in your business today.
Yeah. So Sabrina Victoria, I run a kick-ass all-female community called Her Nation. I'm looking to build the largest all-female community on the planet, all based around networking and collaborating. And the idea around everything that I do is you know something that I don't know, and I know something that you don't know. And the only way for us to both rise as humans is for us to share our knowings. So everything that I do revolves around curiosity, questions, staying in the state of a student at all times, and bringing people together, networking and community.
I think that's amazing. I love networking and collaborate. I'm new to the whole collaboration space this year. And I'm finding I really enjoy it because it makes sure that it's not all about me. And I love that. I'm thriving in it. It just makes me happy. So I love your passion and your drive for what you're creating. It's amazing.
Thank you.
So we're going to we're just going to dive right in. I would like for you to start out, and I'm just going to kind of give you the floor. I would love for you to share your story that you have gone through and overcame to get to where you are now, serving in this amazing space. And
so I'll give you
I'll do that.
I'll give you the short version, and then we can kind of unwrap and unravel however it seems to fit.
Perfect.
So I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. I've been knocking on doors since I was 5 years old, and everything was relatively okay considering until I got pregnant at the age of 20 with no husband. Emphasis on the no husband part. Because Jehovah's Witnesses, as most people know, have very strict rules. So within 72 hours or so of me announcing that I was pregnant, I lost all communication with my entire family and my entire community, everything that I had ever known, basically. And side note, that happened because I decided to keep my baby. If I would have secretly aborted my baby, this journey never would have happened. It would have been a completely different journey. And I think that is a key to so much of the jadedness, bitterness, and frustration that I really had to heal from as a female going through this journey. So long story short, within that realm, I had my child and I led a stereotypical single mom broke life. A rolling balance of a negative $172 in my bank account at any given time, car getting repoed out of the parking lot, eviction notices on my apartment door every other month, incredibly dark suicidal thoughts on a daily basis, dealing with postpartum. So all of the icky thoughts that you have as a mother about what you want to do to your child, but not knowing about postpartum, because again, having no community, no family to ask these questions to. So literally just thinking I was a psycho mother, just an unloving psycho mother for so much of that time period, sitting in a state of unworthiness, of sinfulness, and of darkness, just not in a good spot. I did that for 2 years. I have no idea how I did that. It's very confusing to me. I have no idea how I did that. However, right around that time, I met a man who had money. And I thought that that man was given to me by God, despite the red flags that were stapled all over his body. And I fell hook, line, and sinker with all of his manipulations. I was very young. I was very naive. Again, didn't have community to ask any questions to. And he coerced me to do all of these things by making him look shiny and pretty. Leave your place and move in with me. All you have to do is take care of the house. Leave your job. Come work for me. We're going to build an empire together. Side note, I'm going to pay you $250 a week, which will make sure that you still continue to stay broke, even though you're living in a nice house now, which means I couldn't pay my phone bill, couldn't pay my car note, couldn't do all these things. So then he kindly, took those things over, took over my phone, took over the car, bought the computer. And I turned around 8 years in and I have nothing. I own nothing. I have nothing. And nothing's in my name. Mental abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse times 10. And one day I just found myself on the floor, on the ground, in the bathroom, in the dark, having a complete mental breakdown, like the kind of mental breakdown where you're crying and screaming and yelling at the same time, where you just can't even breathe. You feel like your soul is being torn from your body. And I took up my phone and I did a Google search. I always say Google saved my life. I Googled, why is my boyfriend bullying me? Because I didn't know any other vernacular other than that. And the entire world of abuse just hit me right in the face. The entire world of codependency, high empathetic vibes, no voice, financial abuse, low self-esteem, no confidence. And I dove headfirst into the world of personal development. Soon after that, I opened up a secret bank account and a secret storage unit. I started 3 online secret businesses. And over the course of 4 years, I saved $50,000. And one random day, I took my son, our clothes, and my bicycle. And I started all over again from scratch with a mattress on the floor. And here I am today.
There's so much in that story that we can get back. We don't have time. we need like a whole, week just to sit down and have a conversation to unpack all that. And so I guess what I kind of want to do is recap a little bit of what I'm hearing and then kind of ask some questions to unpack a few things that I think will help listeners right now. So what I hear is being raised in a family around their faith system, something that doesn't sound like it's even supported by that belief system I don't know that belief system. I don't know the Jehovah's Witness arena. To hear you say, if I would have secretly aborted the baby, I wouldn't have been ostracized by my family for being an unwed mother.
Yep.
And that in itself just wrecks my heart. Because here's something I think is so important for the listeners. You and I have had a conversation about faith. Because I'm very strong in my faith. And that's not something you're ever going to go back to. And guess what? We can still collaborate and we can love each other and we can be kind to each other. And that's not something we have to even worry about. And I really want to encourage people with that. That is not a barrier. That should never be a barrier of loving people and being kind and supporting each other walking through these journeys.
Exactly.
Next, you talk about the place you were with this new man coming into your life after your 2 years of postpartum and suicidal and all of those things, which so many of us have experienced. And if we're in a decent relationship, a good relationship, even if we're in a marriage, there are things so many of us don't understand about postpartum depression, don't know about what that does to our minds after having a child. And so to go through it alone, on your own, not knowing, I'm so grateful you're here.
Thank you. Me too.
That's amazing. Then you talked about meeting someone and being with them for 8 years. And you mentioned a lot of the red flags that I hope people are hearing right now. Go back and listen to all of them, because if you heard any of them and you were like, oh my gosh, that sounds like me, do some research. And to hear you then say, and this is the piece that I'm really hoping people can be like, oh, I can make a change. And I have a question around this. Google saved your life. And learned you were in a bad place, in a bad situation, and you secretly opened bank accounts, started businesses, and started setting yourself up to save yourself and your child.
Yep.
And you did it without family, without support, without people around you that encouraged and supported you behind the scenes. That is powerful. There are so many people out there who say, well, I don't have support. You had someone doing everything they could to hold you down and hold you back.
Yep.
And you did it. You broke free from that. And so I would like to maybe ask you some things around that piece, because I think that's going to free some people today. When you decided, I'm going to open a bank account, I'm going to start these businesses, can you maybe walk us through what that looked like for you? Because you still live in the same house, you still have this life together. How do you do it secretly? Because you're in the same mode of your survival mode, you're protecting yourself and your child, and you know you need out, and now you need to change and you need to do this. So what are some of the steps that you took to get this to start this situation changing?
Yeah. So first, I was super scared. I think that's so important to recognize. I was so scared that he would find out, that I would be seen. So one of the issues that I love to talk about is this thought process of impossible. A lot of times when we're in a situation, we can't seem to get out of the situation. We tell ourselves that it's impossible. So because we're telling ourselves that it's impossible, you make yourself right, thus it's impossible, right? So I had to, while I was going through all of this learning and all of this education and reading all of these books and diving into this new me, I had to start changing my mindset from I can't to how can I? So how could I? If it was possible, how could I? And my situation was really tough because my abuser was very, very micromanaging over my world. He would ask to check my receipts for dates and times to make sure I said I was where I said I was. He told me that he had people watching me all the time. He had me convinced that I had a tracker on my phone, that I had a tracker on my car. So I was in complete like mode of anxiety at all times, all the time during this realm. Before that, it didn't matter because I was doing all of the things accordingly. But if you're trying to get out, you have to start to break some of those rules. So to be completely transparent, one of the very first things that I started to do was lie about where I was to see if he was really tracking me, because I really thought I was being tracked. So I would do things like go to Target. He would call me. He'd ask where I was, and I would say at Walmart just to see. And I knew that if he was like, nah, I could be like, oh, sorry, Target, Walmart. I don't know, like got him confused. So sorry. Like I would do stuff like that, stuff that I knew he would catch because he's very OCD and analytical with stuff like that. So he would totally have called me out for it. But then I would be able to like dig my way out of it pretty easily without looking like I was totally lying and being deceitful about the situation. So I started to do stuff like that probably within the first month or two of really starting to recognize that I needed to create a plan. Once I realized that he had no idea where I was, the whole thing was fake. He had no tracker. It was all a freaking lie just to like get to my head. That's what these people do. They're insane. That I then made a plan to go to a bank. I went to a bank that was 2 towns over. And I still remember the woman I talked to. Her name was Stephanie. I'll like never forget her. And I sat down with this woman and said, hey, I literally told her my story. I'm like, I'm trying to escape an abusive relationship. I've never, like the last time I opened a bank account was with my mom when I was like 10. I've never opened a bank account since then. I have no idea what I'm doing. Can you please help me? And she went over all of the things, and I opened up my first little bank account and I got my little slips. And she also wound up giving me some sort of a deal where I got a safety deposit box for free. And for like a year or something like that, she signed me up for some special accounts. And so I was able to then put the notice for my, for the storage unit that I wound up getting a few months later, and my checks and anything else that was like I was keeping on the down low, I was able to put those into my safety deposit box at the bank.
I would have never thought, because that was going to be one of my questions as well. As soon as you said receipt for your bank account, I was like, where is she keeping it? How is she doing this? And so I never would have thought safety deposit box.
Yeah. So all I had to do was worry about hiding the key, which wasn't that hard. You know, I just hid it in the bottom of my sock drawer and like a dresser that he never would have looked at. And it was just a key I just shoved way in the back on the floor and just kept it there. And then whenever I needed to go visit or drop something off, you know, the key was accessible.
Wow. So knowing like, okay, so now that you have established a bank account, you have a storage unit, you're on this journey, what was maybe one of the things that started to change inside yourself? Besides, obviously you said changing your mindset in the beginning. What were some of the things you started? I guess maybe that's not the way I want to ask this. In the ways that you started changing, I guess, how did that impact your environment at home? Because I know when you make changes, things change around you. So how was that shift being received, I guess, in that environment as you were going through all of this?
Yeah. So I feel as if I am very grateful in how that version of me decided to do this. I don't know if I listened to something right off the bat or I just knew intuitively, but I never approached my partner with this thing that I was doing. I never told him about narcissism. I never told him about abuse. I never told him about the books I was reading or the finance books or nothing. I literally pretended like nothing at all was happening. And what I started to do is I was doing so much research on how these individuals operate, people with high narcissistic tendencies. And I started to use his tactics against him to help me. So one of the things that people with high narcissistic traits love is admiration. They love to be told that they're awesome. They love to be told that they're great. They love to be put on a pedestal. They love to have all the power. So I started to pour into him all of these like things that I knew that he desired as this type of individual. The other thing I had to learn how to do is just be two different people. I had to act this. I remember there was times where he would be so rude to me. And normally during the situation, he'd be so mean, so rude. The verbal vomit that would come out of his mouth would literally stab someone. I mean, he's just so quick and so mean. He's just so mean. But as I started to learn, it no longer impacted me. So I had to get good at fake crying even in order to play the role of, this is when I would normally break down and have a nervous breakdown and be in the corner. And I had to play act that, knowing in my head that I was in complete control and I knew exactly what I was doing. And he was playing right along with it. So my power really started to grow in my confidence to be able to exit this situation because I was learning. I was constantly being a student. I was reading and I was watching him. And every situation that I was in, even if he did knock me down, not physically, but mentally and emotionally, knock me down, I would get up and I would think to myself, what did I just learn? What did he teach me? What can I do differently next time in order to not let him get to me the way he got to me? And so instead of verbally vomiting back, instead of giving up, instead of doing all the other things I could have done, I put myself in the mindset of on the job training. I was on the job training. He was training me on how to work with somebody who has high narcissistic vibes. And I was just training on the job. And that's the way that I really started to mentally be able to put up with this while I'm building my finances, building my power, building my voice, starting an online community secretly. It was a lot. It was mentally and emotionally a lot, but I did.
That's incredible. I guess I would want to know too, then at that point, you're making these shifts on how you approach him in these situations, which I can imagine was different than what you had done before. Did he ever verbalize that he recognized the changes in you that you were making towards the situations?
No, he had no idea.
Wow.
No idea. Until probably, remember, this took me 4 years.
That was going to be another question I asked. Yeah.
Yeah. So this took a really, really long time. And what I really want to hone in on, if you don't mind, is when I say I made 50 grand and then I escaped, yay. It wasn't like I just continuously made 50 grand and then I escaped. The journey to go from zero money to money was a long journey of absolute ridiculousness because my mental capacity was changing. My power was changing for lots of different reasons. But to get back to the money part, when I collected 6 grand, when I had 6 grand in my bank account, I wanted to low-key brag. I wanted him to know that I'm smart and I can do things.
Right.
I'm valuable because he had me just registering that I was not. So one day I'm on my bank account secretly. He wasn't home. I heard him come home. He's coming up the stairs and I wanted him to see it, but like knew he couldn't see it. And I just closed my computer screen, my laptop, like 1.5 seconds too late. Just ego totally got in the way. And he saw $6,000 in a bank account. And he totally freaked out. He cut off my allowance of $200 a week or my chore money, I used to call it. Turned that off for 6 months, totally freaked the F out as far as, taking advantage of him, skimming off the top, not giving back. How dare I? How could I possibly have money saved? If I have money saved, then I should be paying for stuff, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, this is the only way that I have to escape. He was keeping me poor on purpose. And this was the turning point for me. So when I first started saving money, I was not saving money to leave. I was saving money to have a choice to leave. I wanted to have a choice. At that point, when that happened, and he was so definitive about how dare you have money and you should have no money. The things that were coming out of his mouth for that 2 hours of him just berating me about this money, I started to register like, holy shit, what I thought was happening is actually happening. Because when you're in love with somebody, you want to be like, well, maybe he's not trying to be financially abusive. Maybe he's not trying to keep me poor. Maybe he just doesn't know. Maybe he you know what I mean? We're justifying it. But when he had that conversation, had that freak out, this whole light bulb in my head went off and I was like, holy crap, this guy is literally trying to make sure that I have no money ever to keep me a prisoner. So fast forward 2 years, I started getting my little allowance again after 6 months. I continued to run my business. I had $13,000 in my account. Again, feeling on top of the world. I start looking at apartments. I call my son's father and I say, hey, son's father, I am planning on leaving my partner at the moment. I just wanted to let you know I'm looking for places. There's going to be some shifts, some changes. I'm hoping that you can hang out with your son a little bit more often while I'm doing all these moves and changes. He's like, yeah, sure. No problem. Absolutely. Anything for you, girl power. A couple weeks later, he calls me. He's like, hey, I'm wondering if I can take our son on a camping trip. I was like, yeah, of course you can take him on a camping trip. That would be fantastic. It was summertime. And he takes him on a camping trip. Again, long story short, he never gave him back. He sent me an email saying, thank you so much for taking care of our son for the past decade or so. I got it from here. He had moved in with his new girlfriend who I didn't know where she lived and just literally disappeared. So I, of course, freaked the F out, call a lawyer. It took an entire year and $18,000 of my $13,000. Lawyer's fees in order to get back what was rightfully mine, full custody of my child. So now I'm negative $5,000 in credit card debt, no money, starting over from scratch again. And this is the thing with the story. It's like, I wanted to give up. I was working so hard on these side businesses. I was working so hard on this double life. I'm getting reamed out daily by my abuser, literally daily, on the hour, every hour, just getting rammed because that's just the life that I had led. And I'm like, I have this light at the end of my tunnel. I'm like, okay, just a little bit longer, just a little bit longer. I just have to enjoy this just a little bit longer, just a little bit longer. And the rug just keeps getting pulled from under me over and over again. And I remember sitting in my car, and this was a definitive time in my story. I'm sitting in my car. I'm at my lawyer's office. I had just paid my last $3,000 on my credit card because I had no money. And I was in my car crying just like all drama, hitting the steering wheel. I had this flimsy piece of packet of papers with the new custody rules for my son of like, you can have him on the weekends and we're going to do a little drive-by to drop him off. And $18,000 for this like 17-page packet of child rules. And I'm just like, the universe hates me. The universe hates me. I'm getting punished for all of my sins. Mom and dad were right. All the things about religion going through my head, all of the things about God, me just being a horrible sinner. And I had to make a choice. Am I going to try again? Or am I going to just give up? And just, this is my life. People live with abusers.
Mhm.
Everywhere. I meet them everywhere because people hear my story and people direct message me. They meet me on the sidewalks and the streets. They hear my story on social media. And they live with abusers. They live with people exactly like who I used to live with. And I'm like, maybe this is just my destiny. Maybe this is just where I'm supposed to be for the rest of my life. And maybe I just have to be okay with that. And it was in that vehicle when I made a definitive choice that I was going to continue to try until.
Mm.
That was it. I was going to continue to try until. And this is why I did not want to 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years later, I did not want to be sitting down on the couch, getting reamed out by this man, thinking to myself, what if I would have tried one more time? So I did it again. I put my head down, continued with my double life. I was getting child support at that point, which wasn't a lot, but it was something. And I just dove headfirst into my dreams, into my vision, into what I wanted. And year later or so, $31,000 was the bank account number. And I left, just walked out.
I just have chills. That is, I think it's, I don't even know. I don't have words. It's hard to get me speechless.
I just think it's so important. And the reason that I love to tell that part of the story is it's so much easier to not. But the daily knocking of authenticity is way heavier than moving past what seems hard. You know, like to do it again seemed just ridiculous and so heavy and so hard and so extra and so unnecessary. But I knew that if I woke up the next day and did not go forward with my plan, it would just weigh so heavy on my heart every day until the day I died. You know?
And how amazing that you were able to do that for yourself. Because it all comes from within.
Yep.
We have to look within ourselves to find the strength, the resilience, the tenacity, the drive, the motivation, all the things. Everything external is learning, like you said, right? You're learning externally. And then it's the internal choice that we all get every second of every day to make a shift.
Yeah.
Change something to save ourselves, to improve our life, to go after that thing, to choose that your value has nothing to do with someone else's opinion or someone else's brokenness.
Absolutely.
And too often we let the external world around us dictate our internal worth, how we see ourselves. And you chose you. And you chose to change that. You chose to do differently. And I just appreciate so much you sharing that story with us today. And I hope that it makes an impact on someone to choose themselves who right now maybe is hearing this that hasn't felt like they could choose that. And I truly believe that it will positively impact others to take actions for themselves.
Me too.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us on today's podcast. What I do want to share is Sabrina's so gracious, you guys. So if you want to get connected with her, her links and information will be in the description below. You guys can find all that there. But something that she also has done is there's a link for her Empower Hour, 8 weeks for free.
Mm.
If you're looking to make a change, you want to network, you want to collaborate, you want to learn, you want to educate yourself, and she is someone that you find that you align with, click the link, get connected, and everything's down in there. So Sabrina, thank you also for that gracious gift and just being here and sharing with our community.
Of course. Thank you.